Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a little chat about comedy and tragedy in music. It's a topic that I return to kind of frequently if you've been following this channel, but it's worth making every so often at some kind of regular interval, because it's important. It's important for people, I think, to want to enjoy the fullness, which is our classical music tradition, to understand why it is that comedy is so much more difficult to achieve and so much more wonderful when it is achieved than tragedy, or at least sadness and misery. First of all, we have a prejudice in the classical music world, in the art world generally, which is that music expressive of suffering and misery is somehow deeper and more profound than music that expresses happiness. Now, it may be, from a psychological point of view, that unhappy music is more responsive to the actual human condition, which in itself is a rather depressing fact, but that may be real. And for that reason, we may find that sad music is somehow more important or affecting or realistic than happy music, because we're so seldom happy. That's a pity, but that's beside the point. In order to make musical misery, which is really different from tragedy, by the way, we'll talk about that in a second, but in order to do unhappy music, it's really very, very simple, because in our tonal system, we have created a dichotomy in which major keys are generally happy and minor keys are generally sad. So the longer you dwell in a minor key, the sadder the music gets. It's really very straightforward that way. That's how Mozart got his reputation as a great master of musical sadness and pathos and all of the, sort of negative emotional qualities. Because when Mozart does his recapitulations in sonata form movements for the most part, whereas every other composer in the world would switch into a major key for a happy ending, Mozart did not. Mozart remained consistently in the minor key, and that gave his music a much darker character than that of his compatriots. Now, he wrote very few works in minor keys. Most of them are in happy major keys, but the ones that he did write in minor keys are really zingers, and they're the ones that are like the most famous. And they include the G minor symphony, the G minor string quintet, Don Giovanni, the C minor wind serenade. There's just this list, and everyone sort of knows them. The D minor and C minor piano concertos, that's Mozart in a minor key. There are 626 Kerschel numbers, and maybe this many, a handful, 2 handfuls are in minor keys. But that's not the point. That's what got the attention, because of their supposed extra depth and profundity and their unusualness, their distinctiveness. And so I get that. I really do. And Mozart does it beautifully. It's not that the emotions aren't real, or that the depth of sadness or pathos or whatever you want to call it isn't very true. It all is. It really is. But it wasn't that hard. It's not that hard to just not modulate to a major key at the end of your first movement. I mean, when you think about it. But that assumption that things would end happily is a very, very, very tough one to shake. If you listen to Verdi's operas, for example, there was a tradition in Verdi's operas that the great concertato at the end of whatever act you were ending in, if it was in a minor key, would have to switch into the major key for the ending, because the ending had to be stable and somehow satisfying. And minor key endings were considered to be, nobody wanted to be miserable. You're supposed to not be miserable. So until very late in his career, Verdi would always end every act. And all Italian composers would end every act of an opera in a major key, even if the episode was one of incredible horribleness. One of the most fabulous ones, actually, is the end of the first act of Macbeth, after the murder of Duncan, when they discover that the king has been murdered, and everyone has this horrible shriek of horror and unison chorus. They're all going, ah! and talking about what a terrible, awful thing it is, and how they have to find the assassin, and it's, and then all of a sudden the music is like in 3/4. They're going ya da 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 ya da da. And and you sort of go, huh? What the hell is that? And it's that was the convention. It was a convention, and so that's another reason why we tend to value these minor key things, because they buck convention. And Mozart was a great convention bucker. So there you go. Minor keys are not hard to do. Sadness is not hard to do. You just stick around when you're minor key. Of course, great music in minor keys requires great ideas and a great composer. And we're not talking about, just play minor chords and you're going to have instant tragedy. It doesn't work that way. You still got to be a composer. But the emotion is rather easy to evoke, and it's cumulative. The longer you're there, the sadder it gets. The Funeral March from the Eroica Symphony, whoa, 15 minutes of it. Yeah, that really lays it on thick. So that's minor keys. Tragedy, I want to point out, is a little bit different, because tragedy, in the Greek sense, is not about misery. It's about the triumph of fate over human aspiration. And so that requires aspiration. And so it requires contrast. There are only 3 major works in the entire symphonic repertoire, that I think express tragedy. And they're Mahler's 6th, Sibelius's 4th, and Brahms' 4th. Those are the ones. There is nothing else. And there are other works that end in minor keys, but that's a different situation, but that actually represent the crushing of aspiration by an impersonal and uncaring destiny. It's really kind of a fascinating concept. And how those composers do it is, they each do it differently, and it's just absolutely marvelous. It's the subject of maybe another talk or two. But anyway, so that's tragedy. But in speaking about tragedy, about the crushing of hope, we have to mention the one quality that comedy also requires. And it explains why tragedy is so rare, and that's contrast. Impersonal fate, human hope, 2 totally different powers at work. Well, comedy operates similarly. Comedy depends on contrast. And because it depends on contrast, its effect is not cumulative as misery is. You don't just hang out in a minor key and you get, wah, misery. With comedy, you have to have constantly shifting colors and contrasts, because comedy is about something being funny in opposition to something which is not. That's how the funny happens. You have some kind of surprise, some kind of unexpectedness. It all depends on contrast. And intimately associated with contrast, especially when we're not talking about music with text, which can be funny because the words are funny. We're talking about abstract instrumental music. The other essential element is timing. You have to have, we talk about with comedians, their sense of comic timing, a pause, an inflection of a phrase, a way of saying something. It's all about the way it's timed. And when you don't have words at all, timing becomes one of the major factors. And the truth of the matter is, very few composers, even great ones, had a feeling for comic timing. Very few people have a feeling for comic timing. Haydn had timing. That's what makes his music funny. That's what makes it great. That and incongruity, the contrast between something that could be seemingly very sad and then something which is ridiculously ridiculous, right next to each other. Contrast and timing are what make music funny and make it, not happy, comic. There's a difference, right? There really is. You can have comic music which is actually rather sad. It could be bitterly comic. There's all kinds of degrees of comedy. There's irony, which was Mahler's big thing. A whole different realm of musical expression there. But at the end, it depends on your feeling for contrast and for timing. And that is vastly more difficult to achieve than simply hanging out in your minor key to make your music sad. You First of all, you have to start usually with you're in a generally happy ambience. And the problem with being in a generally happy ambience is that unlike sad music, if you just hang out in the major key, if you do the opposite of what you do to do sad music, you just hang out in the major key and everything's in a major key and it's all lovely. It's boring. It's boring. It feels that it's lacking in contrast. That's because minor keys are inherently unstable in our tonal system, and they create that undercurrent of anxiety and tension. But music which is purely in a major key, it never does anything, has no tension at all. It just sits there and it's like a puddle, and eventually you're going to get bored with it. So you have to create tension. And the way you create tension in our wonderful tonal system is with dissonance. Minor key music is more dissonant than major key music. And I mean, there are acoustic reasons for that and all that. We don't have to go into, but just take my word for it for now. So dissonance is going to create tension. That's movement away from major keys, dipping into minor keys, doing things with other harmonic gambits, strange rhythms, things that you can do, whatever you could do to disrupt the pleasant, unruffled surface of your major key. That's going to be part of what makes music comic. You can make major key music interesting by using dissonance and all kinds of other interruptive things, but it won't necessarily make it funny or comic. It'll just be interesting. It'll be worth listening to. All great music in major keys has that element by great composers because they know, they understand. Listen, it's going to be boring as heck if we don't do something here that's interesting. But then it's what happens to your material and how you arrange it. And one of the most marvelous bits of comedy is Haydn's joke quartet. How does he make it funny? He makes it funny because of his timing. The tune is da 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 dum ba da 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 dum ba ba da 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 dum ba da 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 dum. It has 4 phrases. They're all of equal length. You can put them all together. But one of the things Haydn discovered is that you could also put pauses between them. Da 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 dum. Ba ba da 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 dum. Ba ba da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. That's the end. I think it's funny even when I do it. Why? Because he's just stretching out the pauses between each phrase. And the longer you stretch them out, the funnier they become because you don't know what's going to happen next. You have surprise. And because the opening, the first phrase, da 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 da, it can be the beginning or it can be the ending. So you don't know which it's going to be. But Haydn makes sure we think it's the beginning. So when he finally does it the last time, after a big long pause, you're waiting for the theme to continue. You have an expectation, but it's defeated. It doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. It's the end. And it's simultaneously surprising and funny and satisfying because harmonically it is a suitable ending. It's just that we were trained not to think of it that way. So when it finally does get used as the ending, it's a complete surprise, but it also satisfies our musical feeling for closure. It's really an incredible thing that Haydn's doing. And very few composers realize the ability of music to do that. And it's not easy. It's really not. I mean, very few composers were able to achieve that. And so I just want to make the point and leave it at that without going on ad nauseum about this, that in order to appreciate comedy in music, you have to have a certain or develop a certain feeling for those elements of music that go into creating the desired mood. And that's, like I said, it's timing, it's contrast, it's all of these things. And you have to, more importantly, divest yourself of the notion that music in minor keys, that sad music is deeper, more sublime, more transcendental, more spiritual, more any of those things. It's nonsense. That is a pure prejudice, as far as I'm concerned. The music itself is going to be the depth of any piece of music is dependent on its degree of workmanship, mastery, compositional craft, and expressive point. Something which is pointedly comic is as deep and profound as something which is pointedly tragic. I really believe that. And I think because I believe that, frankly, I believe that I'm able to extract a tremendous amount of additional joy and meaning from pieces of music that a lot of other people consider to be, well, they're just trivial because they don't hear it. The other problem with comedy, and I'll close with this, is that it's just a very personal thing. Some people have no sense of humor. Classical music people are not known for their sense of humor. They really aren't. And people who are self-conscious culture vultures are not known for their sense of humor. I mean, when people's self-respect and self-worth is intimately tied with their taste in music or art or something else, they're not likely to be able to laugh at themselves, to find humor in the fact that they're, going through their ritual cultural ablutions at regular intervals. That's the other problem. The culture itself is not conducive to humor, and it never was. And that's why composers like Haydn, or even Dochnani, who was a very funny composer, and some of these others who really knew how to build humor into their music, that's why their humorous music was always considered trivial, or they were not given the popularity they deserved because they didn't deal with the innermost depths of human agony and misery and the true human condition, which is one of Schopenhauerian suffering at all times. And I have no patience for that. I really don't. I think that whether you have patience for it or not, it's a good thing to try and develop a sense of the comedic in music, because it will open you to a world of musical experience that you may have been missing. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you for joining me. Take care.